Okay, welcome. This is the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting for 9 a.m. Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is citizen input for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone online with raised hand feature? Okay, kind of quiet this morning. So next item is consent agenda. A couple items on here.
Oh, I needed to make an announcement.
Oh, sure.
Um,
We're gonna have to put that on the agenda for you, so you always have something. No, not a problem.
Brenda informed me this morning through county legal that if I want to join the Oregon State Reform Health Policy Conference on November 5th as a Deschutes County Commissioner, they would allow me to do that. I need to announce that to the group that my fee to attend would be waived by them. So this is November 4th, 2025, and it is in Portland if you are interested in following that conference.
So you're acknowledging as a commissioner, you're just letting your fellow commissioners understand that you'll be attending that conference? Is
Right,
that the
but
idea?
because they said the cost was like $425. And so I asked Brenda to check on it. And I would be allowed to attend for free.
Okay, yeah, and you're on the government.
I'm on the LGAC
Okay, yeah.
and the Health Council group. So I thought this flowed together.
Any thoughts, Commissioner? Yeah, good. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, and yeah, I mean, do you want to put a note for just kind of commissioner announcements in here on the agenda? Because
I know,
be ready for that. No, that's good though. I mean, the good information.
yes.
But yeah, I mean, let's do
We
that.
can talk
just,
about
you
it.
know, just in case, because we have other items at the end, but commissioner announcements or.
I mean, the fact that usually people attend the first of the meeting, and if our meeting goes on for quite
Mhm.
a long time, and then we
absolutely.
do our announcements, something that's really important, I think it should go at the first of the
Yeah,
meeting.
and I usually just put notes on my other items at the end, but yeah, that's fine. So we'll change our agenda just slightly and say, if there's commissioner announcements. So at this time, consent agenda, 3 items, 1 set of minutes.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I would just like to thank this group of amazing folks who are willing to serve on the Public Health Advisory Board. As the commissioner that liaisons with the FAB, I get tremendous value out of the discussion, the presentations, and the input of the FAB. So thanks to all of these folks for participating.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Item number 4, public hearing and consideration of an order approving annexation to the Bend Park and Recreation District.
Morning, Commissioners. Dave Doyle, County Council. You have before you request for annexation into the Bend Park and Rec District. Order number 2025-034 has been prepared for you. Noted in the staff report. The petition has been reviewed by the assessor's office and the clerk, as well as community development. It meets all the requirements. Proceed. I believe it's a 10 acres. There's a dwelling or dwellings on the property, and I believe it's just adjacent down near the not landfill. It's in that area of the county. You may wish to annex into the Bend Park and Rec District. The Bend Park and Rec District, as you can see in the paperwork, has approved of it. And so we would ask the board to open up a public hearing, take any comments, and then proceed with the order. I did hand you folks an updated packet material. What was in your initial packet didn't include a map. So we wanted to provide the map to you. And also, when this gets pushed on to the clerk's office for recording, we need to have the signatures redacted anyway. So we redacted the signatures that were on the packet.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering what the update was, but it includes a map and redacted signatures. So this is a public hearing on the matter, approving annexation of 2 properties in the 61 60,000 block of Cabin Lane into the Bend Park and Recreation District. Is anyone here to testify in this matter? Anyone remotely with the raised hand feature? Okay, so seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. These are pretty standard, and it's just a step into the district, so it's not too controversial usually. Any other discussion or a motion?
I'll move approval of Order 2025-034, approving the annexation of two properties in the 6100 block of Cabin Lane into the Bend Park and Recreation District.
I'll second the motion.
Just 61,000 block is, I'll just clarify.
Yes.
3 zeros, yep. So with that, it's been moved into, seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Item number 5, this is a public hearing of an application to rezone 240 acres from exclusive farm use to MUA, multiple use agriculture. So I guess, is there a script on this one? I didn't, yeah, okay. We'll set up for this public hearing. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Now this is my kind of size.
Nice big map.
Oh, I get two. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Audrey. So this is the time and place set for hearing regarding file number 2472497PA, 2472498ZC. This is a hearing on a Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan amendment and zone change request. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Thank you, Chair DeBonne. For the record, my name's Audrey Stewart. I'm an associate planner, the Deschutes County Planning Division. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning a comprehensive plan amendment from agriculture to rural residential exception area and a zone change from exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural. Today's hearing will proceed as follows. First, staff will explain the hearing format and how to testify at today's hearing. This will be followed by a brief presentation on the application. Then the testimony portion of the hearing will begin. If the board chooses to establish time limits, the testimony will proceed as follows. The applicant will present first and will have 30 minutes. Next, persons in support can testify and will have 3 minutes. Then those in opposition will testify and will also have 3 minutes. Afterwards, the applicant will have 10 minutes for rebuttal testimony, and then staff will make any closing comments.
And I'll acknowledge that, yeah, we will support that testimony timelines as presented. 3 minutes is plenty of time if you're prepared with your testimony.
This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address. For our in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board's executive assistant, Brenda. Chair DeBonne will call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. For our remote participants, if you want to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When Chair DeBonne asks if anyone would like to testify, you'll need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you need to press the raise hand button on your computer or smart device, or if you've called in, dial *9. When it is your turn to provide testimony, you'll be promoted from an attendee to a panelist. You may experience a brief pause as your status changes. Once you have joined as a panelist, you'll be able to turn on your camera. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand it to me. If you're in person, please submit your written testimony to me after your oral testimony. If you're participating remotely, you can submit your written testimony via email to me at audrey.stewart@deschutes.org. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Chair DeBonne, I will now return to the script and note that the commissioners must disclose any ex parte contacts, prior hearing observations, biases, or conflicts of interest.
Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I wanted to disclose that the Gales property, I believe, is in this area. And I just, I had worked on that property. I think they have applied for a conditional use permit for maybe using that area. I just wanted to put that in the record. So otherwise, I believe I can proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I can make a similar disclosure about the Gales property. Although it is in the area, it is not the property that's subject to this application. So I believe I can proceed.
And I have nothing to disclose, and I believe I can proceed. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner or member of this hearings body based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts? Anybody with the raised hand feature? As no challenges are presented prior to opening the hearing, does anyone have any procedural objections to the public hearing? I'll just acknowledge that's why we're working through a script, very defined process here. So seeing none, the hearing is now open and staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll now provide some background on the subject application. This property is located east of Bend to the north and south of Highway 20. It's bordered on the west by Ward Road and is bordered on the east by Erickson Road. It consists of 4 tax lots with a total area of 240 acres. The property includes undeveloped land, 1 dwelling, which was approved as a lot of record dwelling, and a photovoltaic solar array, which covers about 62 acres. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning from exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural, and they're requesting a concurrent change in the comprehensive plan designation from agriculture to rural residential exception area. A significant portion of this property is in the landscape management combining zone associated with Highway 20, and no changes are proposed to that overlay zone. In January, the applicant filed a modification of application to reduce the size of the property to be rezoned to the current 240 acres. This request was file number 247-25-000021-MA, which is also being reviewed. The applicant is not requesting an exception to statewide planning goal 3 on the basis that the property doesn't meet the definition of agricultural lands. In support of this, they've submitted a memo from a certified soil scientist who concluded that 52% of the property consists of Class 7 and Class 8 soils. One additional point to note is that a photovoltaic solar array is not a permitted use under the proposed MUA 10 zoning. The applicant argues that the county can approve a zone change that would result in this solar array becoming a non-conforming use. An initial hearing was held before a hearings officer on May 9th. Central Oregon Land Watch and the applicant's attorney both provided oral testimony, and the written record was left open following that hearing. A hearings officer recommendation was mailed on July 9th, and his recommendation was approval. I've received 4 written comments since that hearings officer recommendation was mailed, and those have been uploaded. Leading up to that initial hearing, I received 7 written comments in opposition. They included general concerns such as impacts to neighboring properties, increased traffic, impacts to wildlife, the future of the solar array, as well as comments from Central Oregon Land Watch with concerns such as consistency with the intent of the MUA 10 zone and questions about the applicant's easy analysis, which is their Goal 5 analysis they provided.
Audrey, so 7 comments, with those themes, and then 4 since then. So are the 4 recent comments consistent with the earlier comments?
For the most part, yes. So it was 7 comments from members of the public leading up to that hearings officer hearing. And then during that open record period, both the applicant and Central Oregon Land Watch submitted more detailed kind of written legal arguments. And then July 9th is when that recommendation was mailed. Since then, I've received 4 comments, one of which is from Land Watch, 3 of which are from neighbors with, again, very similar concerns.
Thank you.
This slide shows where we are in the hearings process.
Audrey, were those new neighbors that were commenting, the 3? Or were they already in the record?
I believe they were, I can confirm, I believe that they were new neighbors who
Okay.
were emailing in. So that would be, I guess, a total of 3 new participants.
Okay, thank you.
I'll confirm that. This slide shows where we are in the hearings process. Because this zone change request involves resource land, the board is required to hold their own de novo hearing and issue a decision on this. The full record is available on the project webpage, which is available on the link shown on this screen. And at the end of today's hearing, the board has 4 options. The first is to continue the hearing to a date and time certain, or close the oral portion of the hearing and leave the written record open to a date and time certain. The third is close the hearing and schedule deliberations for a date and time to be determined. Or 4, close the hearing and commence deliberations. And with that, I'm available for any questions from the board.
So I'll just acknowledge for any interested parties, we did have a work session on this item on Monday, so 2 days ago, and that was where the commissioners were introduced to this topic and just kind of the scope of what we're stepping into for this public hearing. And some questions were laid out, which kind of led to these larger format maps and the zoning. So with that, this is the public hearing on the matter, and at this time, the applicant can, oh, yep, Commissioner.
I did, since the work session, I had a couple of additional staff questions I would love to ask. But first off, I'm trying to put the soil analysis for this application in kind of historic context of prior prior rezone applications. My impression is that we've seen a number of rezone applications where the NRCS soil maps showed a significant amount of usable soils, agricultural soils, and then applicants did their own soil study to basically kind of lower the amount of good soil acres. And in this case, it seems like the applicant looked at the NRCS maps and said, oh, well, the NRCS maps make the argument for us, so we don't need additional soil studies to lower the number of agricultural acres to make the argument that this is an agricultural land. I mean, is that a historically accurate way to place this application in relation to others?
Correct. So there have been a number of zone change requests, especially in this area, and a similar exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural. And for the majority of those, what we see is this high-level NRCS mapping. The applicant refines it by having a soil scientist actually go out on the property. They dig test pits. They do this site-specific soil study, and they submit that as basically better information that almost overrides or provides more detail than the NRCS mapping. In this case, the applicant relied on the NRCS mapping, but the soil type that was mapped was a complex. So it included a mix of class 6, class 7, and class 8 soils. And what they did is their soil scientists provided a memo that said, you know, in this soil type, you'll generally see this percent class 6, this percent class 7, this percent class 8. So it's more detailed information, but it's refining the NRCS map. It's not providing a new map.
And it's not actual data collected from within the property.
Correct. It's not based on, for example, test pits on the subject property. It's based on the NRCS map.
I mean, and is it accurate to say that when we've looked at prior applications, the initial impression that you would get from the NRCS maps is that, you know, earlier applications that it was more than 50% good soil, and the detailed soil survey was used to kind of refine that and essentially reduce the number of good soil acres that were within the property.
Correct, Commissioner. So generally, a reason applicants will choose to do that site-specific soil study is to show that NRCS, which is Natural Resources Conservation Services maps, essentially show better soils than what actually exists on the soil property. So that's when they'll get the soil scientist who goes out there and does that site-specific study. In this case, they were just providing a breakdown from their soil scientist of what was mapped on the property.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, you know, these soil surveys and these soil analyses have become like a central focus for our rezone, comp plan amendment, rezone application considerations. I mean, it's helpful to understand all that. And it's also, I mean, in the bigger picture, it's helpful I think it's also helpful for people to understand that soil is changeable. We have, you know, for example, we have tens of thousands of tons of compost waiting for somebody to use it, right by not landfill, and that can dramatically change the classification of soil with an application. Okay, so that's one question. I also, you know, thank you for these maps. It's really helpful in evaluating the goal, the MUA goal of, you know, an orderly transition from urban to rural to be able to see the big context of urban to rural. So my other question is, I'm sorry, I lost it in all my notes. I'm sure it will come up during the hearing today.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And there will be time later if there are additional questions of staff or the applicant.
Okay, as I say, this is our public hearing, so it's time for the applicant. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Chair DeBonne, Commissioner Adair, and Commissioner Chang. Christopher Koback, Koback 937 Northwest Newport, Suite 220, 97703. I'm here today on behalf of the applicant, BCL LLC. My presentation will be a little shorter than the last time I was before you, and there's good reason for that. This was an application that was filed. Staff did a very detailed staff report, concurring with a lot of what we said in the application, and then raising a few issues where they felt specific findings from your hearings officer should be made. And your hearings officer, Mr. Frank, issued after a open public hearing and then written comments, issued a very detailed recommendation analyzing the factual and legal issues raised by the application and answered the questions that staff has. And so with that detailed information in front of you, I intend to really kind of summarize the application and the findings, the recommendations, and then answer some of the questions I heard at the work session, and then address a couple issues that I think may be relevant given the recent Luba decision in the Destiny Court case. So as Ms. Stewart informed you, she took a little bit of my material, this is an area where I think the commissioners are aware there's been a lot of activity in recent years rezoning properties from EFU to MUA 10. There were the East Bend LLC did 68 acres, Mr. Markin did 50-some acres, and then another, Markin was 53. It was a D. Amore company, some Despacio company did the 68, and then East Bend did about 50 acres. And that's consistent with, I think, the map you have. There's a lot of MUA property in this area. It's where the city's bumping up against the county, and there's been a significant activity. And in all of the applications, and I've read those three and pretty much every other rezone application east of Bend as part of the application and in preparation for today. And obviously, soil is where everything starts. And there are really two ways, Commissioner Chang, to get to your comment. There are two historical ways that applicants have approached the soils. You start with the maps, and they'll tell you kind of roughly what's on the property as far as classification. And there's been arguments by opponents that the maps control, and the maps are important. But as Ms. Stewart mentioned, the maps aren't always 100% accurate.
NRCS maps?
Yes.
Just clarity, okay.
Yeah, and they're on your website, the
Yep.
DIAL website, and then there's other data that goes along with those maps. In a very early case involving some DSL property, the board, I don't believe any of you were on it at the time, approved an approach that's called a weighted average, and that's basically using the maps and you weight the average of the different soils, and that's kind of important to understand what Ms. Stewart said is some of these soils are not comprised of just one type of soil, one classification. They're called complex. And we have some on our property, this property that is complex. The other way applicants have done it, and a lot of the application I just mentioned did it this way because the NRCS maps showed more than a predominance of class 6 or better. And then you have to get a detailed soil assessment where they take data from the site and they can demonstrate that it's not, those maps are not accurately reflective of what soils are really on the property. And we put in the record an example of one. They're very thick. They've got a lot of data, pictures of the tests and everything. Because the maps in this case showed that we had a predominance of 7 and 8 soils, we relied on the maps. And then staff asked a question about this complex soil nature. And so that's where we had a certified soil scientist come in and just add information from the NRCS database and explain what those complex soils mean. So, for example, if you may have one that generally is 75% 7 and 8 and 25% 6. And so he broke that out in a very detailed manner. And he's testified before you in writing and orally, Andy Gallagher. He's one of the top people in the county that does this. And that your hearings officer agreed was not a site-specific study under the regulations that have to go to the state. It was just using data to elaborate on the maps. And Mr. Gallagher confirmed that even assessing the complex nature of the soil, this property is predominantly class 7 and 8 soils. So that's how we did it. The Destiny Court case, I want to address that because there's a couple issues in that I think I'm going to put a letter in the record. As I interpret that decision, Luba made 2 findings that could implicate this case. One is when you're talking about farm activities and whether the property is suitable, because as you know, agricultural land is not only land classified as 6 or better, but it's other soils that are suitable for farm activities. And the statute, ORS 215-203, defines a lot of farm activities. And in the past, the historic way that is done in Deschutes County is the focus is on hay growing and grazing, because those are traditionally the most productive and profitable farming operations. And the statute does contemplate profit because it says it's currently putting land to current use for the primary objective of producing a profit. And so that's been historically the way that I've seen applicants approach changes from EFU to MUA 10. They focus on those uses. I read Luba to say, well, if somebody raises the possibility of other farm activities other than grazing and hay production, you need to make findings on it. I went back through the record, and I know Central Oregon Land Watch mentioned a couple uses. Luba seemed to say to me that it's not enough to just mention the possibility of other uses, but if an opponent puts on evidence to support that activity as being viable on the property, then you have to make findings. I'm not sure that Central Oregon Land Watch's comments rise to the level that require you to make those findings, but we're going to put in my letter some additional material. We had a expert farmer, somebody that actually has been farming and has equestrian facilities they operate, talk about other activities that Cowell mentioned in their testimony and explain how those activities are not suitable on this property for a lot of the same reasons that grazing isn't. You really can't operate an equestrian facility without some good soil because you got to feed the horses. Also, the profit is a big thing. Eric Haggerty is his name. He talks about in his written testimony the fact that you got to, just to get a small equestrian facility going, it's going to cost you a couple $1 million. And so you have to look at whether or not the land is supportive of putting that kind of investment in. Because again, the definition of these activities is the objective is to make a profit. So you got to factor in what all your upfront costs are. Another thing Eric talks about is the irrigation. There are no irrigation rights. There's a canal in the area. I know Commissioner Chang asked about that. There's a canal that runs through that area, but a canal doesn't do you any good if you can't use the water. And then Mr. Haggerty talks about what it would cost you to, even if you could buy those, and he's got some for sale. 100 acres of irrigation rights is being marketed for $2 million. So it's really there's a lot of hurdles if you're looking at a property and you want to do any kind of farm activity on it. It's a hard business. I think we have in our statistics that the 2022 national census showed that about 18% of all farming operations make a profit. And that's on all property. So if you're going to look at investing your money in an endeavor to make a profit, you got to look at the quality of the land for anything. And what Mr. Haggerty explains is that is true in Deschutes County, particularly because there are challenges with the soil and the lack of water and the cost of doing that. The other issue that I think Luba may have triggered some additional analysis on is Goal 14. I know the board has traditionally, and I've read it in many of your decisions most recently, said we don't need to go down and look at whether every MUA use allowed is urban or rural, because our comp plan specifically created these exception areas on rural land and allowed these uses. And because it's acknowledged, all of those uses are therefore rural in nature. I think Luba said that at a minimum, you might want to make alternative findings applying the criteria from the Curry County and the Schaefer case, where you look at the density permitted, extension of public services, proximity to the UGB. And so we've addressed that in our letter that I'm going to leave here, just out of an abundance of caution, because I think it's still up in the air what exactly Destiny Court is going to mean for the county in the future. But we thought as a belt and suspenders, we'd address those. So briefly on the application, the hearings officer agreed with us that the rezoning to MUA 10 is consistent with the purpose for the zone. It's allow rural development consistent with the character of the area and the resources on the land. Smaller operations that can't be conducted on at a large scale because of the limitations are allowed. And then, of course, MUA 10 is a zone that supports orderly transition from rural to urban. And the hearings officer, we think, did an excellent job of addressing that and explaining how that is satisfied. He looked at the extension of services. That's one of the things you have to look at. Does it serve the efficient and current extension of public services. On that, I think Curry County case is really important because the court said, here are the services that are rarely urban in nature, sewer and water. The court actually said the other services that you see in rural areas, fire, police, electricity, those really are truly rural in character too, because they're necessary to serve all property, not just rural. They serve all uses. So in this case, the only services that will be needed are fire, police, electricity, the roads that are already there, and we had an expert consultant look at that, and everything else is going to be private wells and private septic systems. So we think that box was crossed off. One of the big issues that came up before the hearings officer was the existence of the solar farm. It's a non-conforming use, but the hearings officer agreed with us that our Supreme Court in the main non-conforming use case, Holmes versus Clackamas County, said explicitly in point blank, the fact that there's a non-conforming use on a property does not make it inconsistent with the purpose of the new zone. The purpose of allowing non-conforming uses is to accept the fact that they are and will remain consistent with the underlying purpose. And eventually, as things change, the goal with most non-conforming uses is over time they come into conformity through what redevelopment or whatever. And so we crossed that off. Now, there were some specific questions at the work session on these solar farms. There were 3 approved in that area between 2015 and 2017, one north of this property, one on this property, and one west of this property. I looked at all of those approvals getting ready for today, and I noted a couple things that were really interesting. To answer one of your questions, Commissioner Chang, it appears that they're all different applicants, but 2 of them may be affiliated. One, I can't find any affiliation in those decisions. But the couple things that you take away from those is, one is there's a test, 2 tests to get those approved that are important. One is you have to demonstrate that approving it won't significantly impact existing farming operations on nearby property. So as part of those decisions, the board already kind of looked at the area, and you'll find in those decisions, if you take the time to look at them, that there was a detailed analysis, kind of like we did, of what's around this property, what are around all of these properties. So we have other solar farms, we have a church, we have a Christian Life Center, we have a PG transformer station, we have a park up to the north, a large, relatively new park. And then south, we have a lot of MUA, like small hobby farms and residential uses. In our view, all of those uses are really more consistent with MUA 10 rather than a detailed farming or a commercial farming operation. In fact, you have to go quite far to the northwest, I think, to find anything that looks like a farming operation. So we didn't think that there was any evidence in the record to establish impacts on adjacent farming from those decisions, and that, I think, translates into our application as well. Now, the other thing about that is that you had to look at soils. So you have to put these solar facilities on land that is least suitable for agricultural use. And so all of those decisions have a very detailed analysis of the soils to demonstrate that the solar facilities are put on property that would otherwise not be suitable for farming anyway. So I'm glad you asked the question, because that inquiry led me down this path, and I looked at it and I found those decisions very, very consistent with what we're asking for and very consistent with what we have to establish.
Can I ask
Absolutely.
another question? And we're not going to deduct this from your time.
Oh, I won't
This is
run
a
out.
question that I'm asking. One of my interests in asking about the PV solar array was just to understand, to get a sense of how far along it was in its life cycle. You know, if they have a 20-year life, and you know, to try to try to predict or forecast whether this solar project that was built in 2015, 16, 17, where sometime around then, was going to fulfill its useful life, or whether you know, there would be a change in zoning, and then it would be immediately ripped out, you know, 10 years before, you know, that investment basically had been, you know, fully utilized. Do you have any sense of the intent of the owner about the solar farm?
I do some. The approval for the conditional use is helpful in one respect because it does acknowledge that at the end of the useful life of the equipment, it will be removed. And in fact, each one of those conditions, or each one of those decisions had a condition requiring the applicant to post a very significant financial security to make sure that the equipment is properly removed at the end of the useful life and that it's restored. The other thing that I think is really significant is what your own staff did in our application. So when we submitted our initial traffic study, our traffic engineer did some research and said these have a varying lifespan, somewhere between 20 and 40 years. It's hard to tell how long the equipment's going to last under various conditions, I suppose. And he assumed that the property would not develop within the planning horizon. Well, your transportation planning staff came back to him and said, that's not acceptable. We don't believe that assumption is true, and we believe you need to do your report assuming that that will redevelop within the planning horizon, and that's 20 years. So we do have some pretty good data that within the next 10 to 20 years, so it's been there 10 years, it's got if you split the difference and say 30 years, we've got a pretty good estimate on when that equipment will be obsolete and when it'll be removed. And we assume that in our traffic study that would be redeveloped, and that's because staff requested it. Now, the other thing about
That's within the 20 or 30-year life span of the project.
we had to evaluate it
Not
as
at
if-
the end of it.
Yeah, we had to evaluate it from a traffic standpoint as if it would be redeveloped within 20 years. And the way we look at it, will it go away immediately? I'm not aware of any plan that it would go away immediately. In fact, I think that would be unlikely. But when you look at so first of all, if we meet all the other requirements, which I think we do, the soils and the consistency with the comp plan and all of the other requirements, and you're looking at whether this would be an orderly transition for that zone, like the other properties that have been rezoned out there, the transition that we see would be coming from west to east. And so it would be, there's property that we're asking to rezone that would be transitioned before the solar farm. So I think it would be unrealistic to assume that under any scenario, a rezoning is going to immediately lead to somebody saying, oh, I'm going to tear that valuable improvement out. I think a more likely assumption to make is when it's done within the next 10 to 20 years, it'll be gone. And then if the city continues to grow and goes east, which seems to be the conventional wisdom, then this property would be there for an orderly transition to rural or urban uses, just like the other properties that have been rezoned just immediately west of it. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, I also just want to emphasize that with this change in zoning, this property would immediately be eligible to rip out this solar farm and put in seven rural residences on 10-acre lots.
I think that's right. It would be eligible for that. And what I'm suggesting is I don't think the economics would support ripping out expensive equipment that's not yet obsolete to do that, particularly when there's property that's also being rezoned that's closer to the city that would probably develop faster and earlier than that. So I know it's a hard one to get at because you're trying to put your head in somebody else's head and say, what would you do? But it just seems to me that the objective material we have would suggest that a reasonably prudent owner would not rip out a valuable improvement on one portion, 63 acres, when there's a lot of other property that needs to and can be developed under MUA 10 before that. I think you'd balance that economic analysis.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um,
Thank you for the economic analysis. And
So what I would, then the last thing I really want to talk about, unless there's questions, is, we addressed goal 5 in the scenic corridor, very detailed study. We didn't, I think the only criticism was we may not have addressed a couple of specific uses. We did most of the individual uses, but frankly, there were some uses that just destination resorts and golf courses that we just didn't think made sense to even talk about because they're never going to go on that property. You can't have a golf course without water. and we didn't think it qualified for a destination resort. So other than those minor criticisms, I think the Goal 5 analysis was well done, and the hearings officer agreed. So unless there's questions, I think the hearings officer kind of hit most of the big issues. I addressed what I think were some maybe potential gaps to fill in here. But we think it's a very solid application, consistent with what's happened out there before, and we respectfully request that it be approved.
Any thoughts on the record from today's public hearing? Any requests for leaving it open or written record period, or just from your point of view?
Testimony, but I have no specific request to keep it open.
Thank you. Thank you for sure.
I do. I have another question or two. So, you know, one of the primary purposes of MUA 10 zoning is to provide for this orderly transition from urban to rural, and you know, as we're recognizing, or you know, as you described in your testimony, this is a really dynamic area of you know, a dynamic, you know, it's probably one of the most dynamic regions of the state of Oregon. So it's challenging to try to put your finger on, where does the urban end and where does the rural start at the moment. And to pinpoint that right now, and also to sort of forecast, how fast is the urban growth boundary moving to the east, because that I fully expect that when the city of Bend completes its next urban growth boundary, some of this MUA 10 land, to the east, will be added. And then, it's also a very complicated question about, where does the rural start here? Because, in this map, you can see that there's a ton of MUA 10 just to the south of part of this property. And then there's some, even to the east of it. So, on the one hand, you could make the argument, well, it's surrounded by MUA 10 land. It makes sense, as part of the orderly transition from urban to rural, for this to be MUA 10 land too. One of the other thoughts that I have is that, we just conducted a rural housing profile, for the county, demonstrating that, there's something, I want to say 900 vacant rural residential lots available within the county. So there's a pretty good amount. When you look at the total population projections for the unincorporated county, and you look at the available vacant lots outside of incorporated cities, I mean, we have twice as many lots, vacant lots as we need to accommodate the projected population growth for the next 20, 25 years. So then that begs the question, well, do we really need more rural residential lots? One of the reasons in this part of the world that converting land to MUA or RR is important is to be able to allow our cities to expand in an orderly way. That zone switch makes it, it really improves the eligibility of lands for inclusion in future urban growth boundary expansions. So I just want to give you a feel for some of the some of the ways that I'm trying to process this idea of an orderly transition from urban to rural. And just kind of knowing that full disclosure, that's what the gears in my head are doing right now. I mean, do you have any thoughts for me on how to think about this question of the orderly transition from urban to rural in support of this application?
I do. First of all, I agree with you that it's a complex issue, a lot of dynamics. And to get it 100% correct, we'd need a crystal ball, and we don't have one. But Bend is, I think you can assume Bend is going to grow. A friend of mine told me that, he said, your town's going to be 300,000 people pretty soon. And I said, I don't believe that. And they go, no, I read it. And so that's a lot of people.
It's on the internet.
And you can't really sit here today and say they're wrong, because you just see people coming here. We had guests in here for my daughter's wedding from out of state in July. And I knew it was going to happen, but after the wedding, during the party, multiple people came up to me and said, hey, you do land use. Can you keep me posted on any available properties? People are going to come, and we're not going to keep them out. And so the way I look at it is the orderly transition, creating more priority one land where we believe the city is going to grow when it grows, also can be viewed as protecting more valuable resource land. Because, the analysis the cities go through is, first, if there's enough priority one land, you stop there. But if we don't rezone bad, poor land, and we think this is poor land for other uses, agricultural uses, if we don't rezone it to priority one, then the cities are going to have to start looking at going to priority three, which is resource land. So the way I look at it is, if you have land where you think the city's going to grow and where other people have endorsed that philosophy and invested money and done this similar rezoning based on the belief, and I think a reasonable belief, that that's where the city's going to grow and we need this orderly transition. Well, you should look at land like this that really doesn't have the capacity for any other use. It's not going to be farmed. It's not going to have any farming activity on it. And you should create that priority one, because that makes other more valuable resource land less likely to be tapped by the city if it grows. And so that's the way I started looking at that issue. But I would agree there are probably multiple different lenses with which you could look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and on a related note, one of the questions I asked myself was, is this premature? Would it make more sense to let this urban growth boundary expansion process sort itself out in the next couple of years and then look at this? And I mean, do you have
I do.
do you have an argument, an argument for greater urgency right now?
Have some insight into that, and it goes back to our discussion 2 weeks ago on the property where I was representing the owner and sisters, where they didn't do this early. And then the urban growth boundary process got going. And one of the challenges that, it's no secret, we've told the board about it, and you were at a joint meeting. Part of the problem with that is now the city's UGB is out ahead of the rezoning, and the city is like, well, what do we do? We'd like to have this. It's great property to include, but you don't have priority one. And so my answer is, I don't think we want to wait to get to the position that my client and sisters is in, where you're behind the urban growth boundary. I think it's a little bit better to be proactive and have it, put it this way, because of the poor quality of this land, I think it's a better practice to say, let's look futuristic. Let's get the priority one land on there. It still can be used for other MUA uses. There are a lot of uses in MUA. Agricultural is not it's not prohibited. And in fact, one of the things that Eric Haggerty, our expert, pointed out is there's a lot of opportunities on smaller parcels to do hobby farms and stuff that's not for a profit. You don't need as much water. You don't need as much feed. You don't need to mend as much soil. So at a smaller scale, people can justify living the country life, having that small agricultural property. And that's conducive under the MUA 10 zoning, as are other uses. And so we think that we don't know what's going to happen with the expansion, and I get there's a reasonable concerns. But we do know what could happen in the interim under MUA 10, and the land could be put to good use. Right. While we wait to see what happens. So for that reason, and the reason I just said about what predicament we got in Sisters, I just think our position is it's better to be looking forward, get it set up now so we're not behind the 8 ball.
Right. Yeah. No, and we're looking at this application today. We're not looking at these past applications, but I would say that one of the reasons I was supportive of some of these more recent rezone applications was
with the idea that, you know, it was important to have these lands available as priority one lands for urban growth boundary expansion. One of the concerns it raises for me, and you know, this kind of gets back to some of the economics arguments you were making, but one of the concerns it raises for me is if we rezone land to MUA 10 or RR 10 to make it available as priority one lands, and it sits there for 10, 15, well, who knows how many years without being brought into the urban growth boundary expansion, you know, then the property owner, you know, is motivated to do something with the land to, you know, get some economic return, and they build it out at RR10 or MUA 10 densities, then you've just put a huge impediment to future urbanization in the way of, you know, an expanding city. So I have asked, and I finally remembered what the other question I wanted to ask Andrew was. I've asked staff to explore ways essentially to protect land for future urbanization immediately adjacent to the city, and we submitted an application to DLCD. I believe we were funded for that. I don't know what the status of that project is, and I don't know also the other way that this land could be quote unquote protected for future urbanization. You know, and wouldn't be developed, you know, at MUA 10 densities prior to that time, and in effect blocking future urbanization would be through the establishment of an urban area reserve. And so if I could pull staff up, that may be the end of my that may be the end of my questions for you, Mr. Kobach. And I mean, but I do want to pull staff up and talk about that. But you're welcome to stay. If you want to,
My piece, and I'll.
Yeah, there'll be a rebuttal opportunity also.
Okay.
Yep. So you want to do that now before other testimony?
I would, yeah, since we're kind of on that trail right now, I would love to run that up all the way out before we move on.
And Commissioner Chang, I would need to follow up on that one. I believe what you're referring to is looking at some sort of land use regulations that kind of put additional restrictions on how land is developed to prime it to be brought into the city.
Yeah,
I need to reach out to our long-range planning staff about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an overlay, essentially the concept of an overlay. I shared this concern before about bringing lands into RR10 or MUA 10, which I think is a good idea, immediately adjacent to the city for to lay the pathway for future urbanization. But then there is this concern that that would make the land available for future urbanization. It would preserve the land in a rural state until said time when that land was brought in, which for some of the farther out portions of this property might be decades away. So I've raised this concern. We pursued this project, and we were funded, and I saw it in the work plan, but it was deprioritized. So I mean, I think every one of these applications that we approve in the immediate area of the urban growth boundary, begs the question, how do we ensure that these lands are actually available for future urbanization instead of being, developed at one house per 10-acre densities, and in effect blocking the future urbanization of those areas, which is housing that we will desperately need. And to tie it back to the rural housing profile again, we have more than enough vacant rural residentially zoned lots to meet our projected needs for the next 25 years, and then PSU gets pretty iffy after 25 years, but PSU was actually projecting that the population of the rural county was going to decline.
after 25 years. Yeah, what we need is land for urban housing in the long-term big picture, and I'm trying to sort out, under the stated goal of an orderly transition from urban to rural for MUA 10 zoning. I'm trying to sort out where this project fits in, this application fits in that big story. And I understand that nobody from CDD is available to talk about that right now.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'll follow up in writing with that to the board, and I can upload that to the record and forward it when we have that update. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is a public hearing on the matter. Anyone here for testimony in support? We do have a neutral undecided, so we'll get right to that in a moment. In support or opposition specifically? We do have a raised hand feature online. I'm not sure which way we're going at this, but please join us. So you've been transitioned into the meeting and you may need to unmute yourself. Over there's, I'm sure you understand how this works, Mr. Isbell.
Thank you, Chair DeBone, Vice Chair Adair, and Commissioner Chang. For the record, my name is Rory Isbell. I'm a staff attorney with Central Oregon Land Watch. Our address is 2843 Northwest Lolo Drive, Suite 200, Bend 97703. My colleague at Land Watch, Robin Hayakawa, submitted some written comments to staff this morning. He couldn't be here today, and I myself am a little under the weather, hence testifying remotely. I do have a few high-level points I'd like to share with you. Land Watch does oppose this application. One of the criteria is the county code's rezoning standards. One of those factors that you must find to be met requires that the change in classification for the property is consistent with the purpose and intent of the proposed zone classification. This has been discussed, but as you know, the property has a large solar facility on it. That use is not allowed in the MUA zone, which is what the applicant seeks here. It is allowed in the current zoning, which is EFU. So we don't believe that this criteria that requires the change in zoning to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the proposed zone is met when the applicant is willfully creating what's called a non-conforming use, a use not allowed in the zone. We heard mention of the soil study that is a part of the record at this point. We do object to that soil consultant's memo being included in the record. It does fit the state's definition of a soil assessment because it provides more detailed information about soils on the property, and thus it must be certified by DLCD, but that has not happened in this case. We do believe the subject property is agricultural land protected by Goal 3 for exclusive farm use. We've submitted historical aerial imagery of the property, and on the southern portion, it shows irrigated farm use in the past. The first iteration of this application included about 19 additional acres. When those acres are included, the subject property, according to the NRCS, is predominantly class 1 through 6 soils, making it per se agricultural land. Goal 3 requires when a county identifies agricultural land to look beyond the bounds of the subject property to determine whether it's agricultural land. So clearly with those 19 acres that the applicant controls had included in its first application, the property is suitable for agriculture based on the soils and the list of 7 factors. Finally, Goal 14, it is a moving target right now, as has been discussed. But we submit that this property is 240 acres. The proposed zone allows a 5-acre minimum density when its property is within a mile of the urban growth boundary, as this property is. So that would allow a 48-unit subdivision with no minimum lot size on this property. That's an urban use that would frustrate the purpose of a nearby UGB. It would draw out urban services. It would cause residents of that 48-unit subdivision to utilize urban services, frustrating, again, the purpose of established urban growth boundaries. And relatedly, the county comp plan policy requires a 10-acre minimum lot size, and the proposed zone allows much less than that, for which would be allowed on this property should it be approved. So thank you for the time. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, I do have a question. So you just mentioned 48 units, no minimum lot size. Can you explain that again real quick?
Sure. So in the MUA zone, there's a provision that says if land is within 1 mile of an urban growth boundary, you get a density bonus, basically. To us, that's counter to Goal 14, as it allows an increased amount of residential development the closer you are to an urban growth boundary.
The cluster development,
Right.
and then you mentioned no minimum lot size.
Yeah, so that's for planned developments. The county code says that there's no minimum lot size for a planned development, which is similar to a cluster development, but varies in particularly that way I just described it. I think a cluster development requires 2-acre minimum lot size. A planned development has no minimum lot size.
Well, as I say, from my point of view, I'm thinking that the intention is to provide an orderly transition, leave open space in case the future is urbanized, and then there's already higher density development that can be transitioned. So I think the intention of that opportunity was for urban growth expansion possibilities. And that's just historical, how our code might have evolved over time.
Sure, I don't believe there's legislative history on the purpose of that provision of the code in the record here. But this property is not in the UGB, so allowing that density of development before the property is, or if it is ever included in the UGB, would violate Goal 14.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anyone else online for testimony? Okay, seeing none. So in the room, thank you for joining us. Brent Barnett or Bennett, please join us. Barnett, is it? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm here on behalf of my parents who have property in the area. Thinking of this other testimony with putting the cart a little before the horse. I just like to see some more data surrounding a lot of this as so if I've heard wild impact on wildlife. Has there been an impact study done? Is traffic ingress and egress? Has there been a traffic impact study done? I haven't seen any of this data yet to say yes or no on this matter. So water rights, I know you're going to have to dig wells. Is there going to be an impact to the current people who are using wells, digging down and taking all that water out of the water table? Is this going to increase their property taxes? Why rural sprawl instead of urban infill? Septic, how's that going to impact? Like if they're going to be on septic, there's no sewer out there. So how's this going to impact the soils then if there's all this septic? Road safety, there's crashes out there all the time by the going out to Prineville, right? There's so many crashes next to our properties, and like that speed should be decreased out there already. Like, how is this going to be mitigated with all of this, this new traffic in the area? Let me see, what else? What's the timeline if there's going to be a development? What does this look like? Like they were saying, is there going to be more houses, less houses, 10-acre parcels, 5-acre parcels? I'm so confused. What is going to happen? I have no idea. So would the fire department be equipped to handle all this? Like more houses, it needs more services. Like, is there a plan to help people in case they're in need, medical emergencies, all that stuff? So this is all questions I have. I don't think we'll have time for all the answers, but I would really like some of this filled in.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
If I could take a moment to respond. There has been some traffic analysis done for this application. If the property was developed out at MUA 10 density, that doesn't get at the question of whether this could potentially be, brought into the urban, or part of the property could be brought into the urban growth boundary in the future, in which case the development scenario is completely different.
one of the problems with, in my opinion, one of the problems with the way that we do land use here in the county, and this tears off of the state land use planning system, is property owners come in with these applications to rezone the property, and then the application to develop the property is a completely separate process. And so sometimes applicants come in here and say, I want to rezone my property. Here's what I'm going to do with it. And they're very explicit. Sometimes they say, they come in and say, I want to rezone my property, and then I have, this range of options available, and I'm going to think about it, which is, I think, very unsatisfying for the public. But it's also kind of a reality. I mean, when someone owns a piece of land and they're trying to project out what they're going to do in 10, 15, 20 years, conditions can change. So, I get why the system the way it is, and I also find it very unsatisfying because I want to actually understand why we're rezoning property for what purpose. Sympathize with you for that, but a bunch of these other things that you were concerned about do get analyzed when there's a specific land use application for development that comes in. Wildlife, water availability for that property. In my opinion, we do a lousy job of understanding what the impacts of putting another well in is on the surrounding properties. That's something that we could be changing in our comprehensive plan, but a majority of the Board of Commissioners has refused to include those kinds of provisions in our comprehensive plan. And all of the other kinds of things, septic would be considered at that point when there's a specific development application. I hope that's helpful, if not satisfying.
Fred, is your are your parents' property, is it EFU?
I'm sorry.
Is the property zoned EFU where your parents are residing?
It's was it MUA 10?
It is MUA 10 then.
Mhm.
Okay. Is it east of this?
I'd rather not say.
Okay, I mean, because I'm just looking at this and if you see this map, there's actually a whole bunch east.
Oh, no, it's really close.
Okay, all right, thank
Yeah,
you.
really, really close.
Thank you for coming in
Yeah.
and representing them.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
You. Is there anyone else for testimony on this matter? Anybody online? So seeing none, applicant rebuttal, little discussion since you're,
Chair DeBonne.
yeah, okay.
Senior Planner Nicole Mardell is here and can speak to the question Commissioner Chang posed earlier, if that's.
Yeah, so if you
information
want
that
to follow
would
through with that a little bit, great. Thanks for following this topic.
Thanks for coming on over.
Of course. Yeah. Good morning, commissioners. I also have Peter Gutowski here, our CDD director. So I can provide just a little bit of detail on what we're calling our Future Urbanization Development Code Amendment Project. This is a DLCD funded project. We received $25,000 from DLCD, and we're planning to explore this through the end of the grant date, which is June 30th, 2027. So essentially, what we submitted to DLCD in regard to the summary of this code project is noting that we've received a steady increase in, rezoning applications adjacent to Bend city limits specifically. So we requested funds in order to explore, through conducting quite a bit of data research, code audits, looking at how other counties across the state handle development adjacent to the UGB, and analyze some of the impacts that we've seen from this type of development. Alongside that, we're meeting with the City of Bend staff, with utility providers such as Cascade Natural Gas, Pacific Power, Central Electric. We're also meeting with transportation agencies, ODOT, County Road Department, and we're also planning to meet with Oregon Water Resources Department as well to better understand some of the concerns that they have with rural development so close to a city and how that may impact efficient future urbanization of that land if a UGB were expanded in that direction. So right now, at this time, we're just starting this code project. I think as the board knows, we had kind of kicked off this project at the start of the new year, but then had some other priorities take staff time. So the board has just recently re-acknowledged that you want us to prioritize this project. So we are working on this, but we are still waiting on a bit of information from the state on recent legislation related to urban reserve changes. So the state did pass a bill. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me with my notes, but they are changing a bit of the state law and state rule regarding prioritization for urban reserve lands. So we wanted some of that information before we gave a more formal update. Wanted to note again, what we can provide a bit more detail on this next month at the board's joint meeting with the Planning Commission. That's on September 25th. But again, at this time, really the scope of the project is to analyze some of the concerns regarding development within a certain radius of Ben's UGB, how that relates to rezonings as well, and explore some updates to our code based on that. So try to explore potentially changes to land division requirements or cluster and planned unit development requirements as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you had any questions.
So this project will be complete by June 2027.
Correct. Yes, our deadline for the grant, so that means that we need to have at minimum adoption-ready documents is June 30th, 2027. And I believe our goal would be to complete this project earlier than that, or, you know, again, at least complete the adoption process by the end of 2027.
And I do remember looking this in the Community Development Department work plan, and I don't remember it being a priority project. Like where does it fall in the kind of in the tiers of when we're going to get to when we're going to start work?
Certainly. So I believe that this was chosen as a priority project, I think, at the end of last year. So that's why we had started kicking it off at the start of the new year of 2025. And then again, the comprehensive plan, as I was the staff planner assigned to this, it just, you know, kind of fell in prioritization with the expected completion of the comp plan next Wednesday. Again, I'll be initiating this from there. We are still waiting for a little bit more detail on that urban reserve rulemaking that I mentioned, but we're at least kicking off once more our meetings with all the utility providers in our background research phase.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can provide more detail again next month at the joint board and PC meeting. I can include, you know, our project timeline and scope, so you can see the breakdown of the phases as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I also, for the county administrator team, could I flag? I think that this is something worth raising in our joint meeting with the City of Bend in a couple of weeks as well. Thank you.
Great. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'll leave you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks,
the
Nicole, for
update.
coming over.
Okay, with a little bit more information now, the applicant rebuttal, closing up the oral public hearing on this matter.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne, Mayor, and Commissioner Chang. This very briefly, I wanted to respond to the Central Oregon Land Watch inconsistency argument. And I'm just going to read a sentence from our Supreme Court in the Holmes case. The fact that those uses become lawfully established nonconforming uses does not mean that having such use is inconsistent with the purpose of the new zone. The well-established laws on nonconforming uses that allow them to continue in a new zone are designed to ensure consistency with the new zone. I think that's the law right now from our Supreme Court. So I think it's hard to make a finding that that solar panel creates an inconsistency on the law. The other thing is on the urban density. I looked at that and just focused on residential development and what Central Oregon Land Watch is concerned about these cluster and planned developments. One of the things that I think gets overlooked is if that were permitted, and I know there's a little bit of question mark after Luba's decision and that it's going to be resolved, those developments require 65% of the property to be open, undeveloped. And I thought about that, and what's the least dense zone in Bend? It's the RL, and it's approximately 1 unit per acre. That's the least dense urban residential development allowed. in a city. And I like, what city looking to meet its housing needs would allow, much less require, 65% of a piece of property to be undeveloped when they need, if it were urban, right? If that were an urban development, you would never have 65%. So I think when you look at the cluster and the plan development, you have to look at it as what is the effective density over the parcel? You can't look at it as, well, you're going to have this many units, because they do allow that, those provisions do allow the preservation of large swaths of land for future development, orderly transition. So I think they're very good for the code. Mr. Barnett raised a lot of really good questions. Whenever an application comes in to rezone, I can imagine all of the people around it are going to at least at some point say, what does this mean? Well, we did a traffic study. It's the worst case for MUA 10. That's what's required. All the service providers got notice. I don't think there was one comment that said this is not a good thing. We object to this. There will be future development actions where all of the details get looked at if the property is developed, and that's just part of our process. But there will be, those will be vetted at the right time and in the right process. And lastly, on the the comment that Ms. Martell just gave you, it sounds like a great idea. It's something that probably should happen, maybe should have happened before, but future planning, as I said, Commissioner Chang, I think it's a wise thing for all counties and cities to do is look at how we're going to grow. But as an advocate for an applicant, I'm here to say, I think if we meet the requirements for a zone change, and I believe we do, as your hearings officer found, I believe we're entitled to have the decision approved today, and these planning things that are really valuable should continue to go. But I think it would be unfair to an applicant that meets the criteria now to say you got to wait a couple of years at least until we see how these plans with the city may or may not work out. And so that's my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. At this time, either staff closing comments, any other questions by the hearings body, or discussion items?
No other comments. I did have a response to Commissioner Adair's previous question about public comments that came in. I went back and checked. After the hearings officer recommendation was mailed, 2 new neighbors who hadn't participated before reached out, and then one comment was a neighbor who had already commented, and then one was from Central Oregon Land Watch.
Thanks, Audrey.
Great. So this has been the oral portion of the public hearing process. There's no request that I've seen to leave the record open. So this will be just a moment to kind of compare amongst ourselves. Do we want to close the oral and possibly written record? Any thoughts?
Actually, I would like to see the letters that he said he was going to submit.
Yeah, so my thought is take everything that's written that's going to be provided today and maybe close the record, because I want to study and set deliberations for a different date. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, not to proceed today, but would we keep the record open or not?
Wait, are you saying that
Do we do 777 or not?
I mean, well, you were just talking about being able to submit submit materials after today, written materials. And what was the suggestion, to close the written record today or not to close the record?
Well, I think the parties involved have provided, when we haven't read it all, but have provided more written testimony for today. So whatever is going to be in the final package, maybe today's the moment we just say, okay, thank you very much, and then read it, study it, deliberate in the future.
Correct. And if I may chime in, Commissioner, if you did vote to close the written record or not leave the written record open, there's one letter that was received via email this morning from Central Oregon Land Watch that has been uploaded. The applicant handed me a hard copy letter, and that would also be all added
Yeah.
to the
So
record.
that would be available to us as part of the record. That's where I was going. So everything's been provided today. As I say, nobody's requested to leave the record open. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay. And also the traffic issues that were talked about, I believe that the roundabout at Ward Hamby on Highway 20 was supposed to help some of the traffic issues out there. And it would be nice to hear from our road department or ODOT to see if things have really improved in that neighborhood. I know we had a lot of really horrible accidents in past years, but the roundabout is functioning now. So has there been actually any improvement? I would hope so. Maybe not with speed, but we need to hear about it.
And so the applicant, as part of this process, they're required to submit a pretty detailed report from a traffic engineer. There's normally some back and forth sort of iterations of those. So our senior transportation planner in our road department and ODOT also was involved in reviewing this one. So then they got to the point that our transportation planner was able to say, like, yes, you've met these transportation requirements. If the board wanted additional information, that could either be done by leaving the record open and getting some new comments from the road department, or by doing just a separate, having the road department reach out and do a follow-up.
Well, I would appreciate a follow-up because, okay, the roundabout is functioning. Have we seen an improvement in that community? And I'm sure that people are still driving really fast after they go in and out of it, or after, but it's definitely there.
So ODOT's one jurisdiction and county's the other because
Right, I know. It's kind of it's a crossover.
So you're proposing that we leave a written record?
No,
open?
I'm just saying at some other, I do believe it's important.
Oh, so just in the future?
Right, yes. So we should hear what's actually happening out there.
Okay, so yeah, an update.
I would encourage us to leave the written record open for a little bit longer. I mean, in between, Audrey just shared with us that there have been a few public comments submitted just in the very recent time. As we know, sometimes neighborhoods and neighbors don't really track what's going on with things like this until the very late in the game. So closing the written record immediately, I think may cut some people off who are just learning about this application. I didn't hear anything from the applicant that indicates that there is an immediate development that they want to proceed with that is urgent. So I don't see any harm in leaving the written record open for a little bit longer.
Yeah, but then it would be 7, 7, and 7 because if there's a record, then a response to it, and then final rebuttal. Do you support that, Commissioner?
Fine.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the hearings body is going to be more comfortable leaving the record open. A consensus here. So let's do that. Standard 777. You might even have a slide prepared for that just in case.
Oh, thank you. Ken.
Oh, look at there it is.
If we are going to do that 777 open record period, new evidence and testimony up until Wednesday, August 27th at 4 p.m. Rebuttal testimony can be submitted up until September 3rd at 4 p.m. And the applicant has until September 10th at 4 p.m. to submit their final legal argument. A few notes about the open record period. Please keep in mind that all submittals should be addressed to me. For email submittals, use my email address, audrey.stewart@deschutes.org. Any electronic submittals must be received by the county server by 4 p.m. Please do not wait until the last minute to submit your evidence and testimony. And please note that staff will not retrieve information from a website link or a personal cloud storage service. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, the record will be open for, so this is just written testimony. So the oral portion of this hearing is closed, written testimony for 7 days or the dates presented, and then rebuttal to that and final applicant argument. I'll just say, I mean, the urban reserve concept in the city of Bend has been a hard thing to wrap our arms around. The development pressure, the urban UGB expansion that was done many years ago now, a little bit of rezone internal plus the expansion of the city. So this is the statewide discussion, and this isn't happening all over the state either. This is happening here more aggressively than most places. We're kind of in I've always said kind of the knife edge of land use in the state of Oregon, but it's good that we're having these discussions also. So with that, anything else on this matter for today? Seeing none, we're all set. Thank you so much.
Thank you for these maps. There.
Oh, here we go. So that was our published agenda items for today. At this time, other items or other announcements by Commissioner Dare.
Oh, thank you.
We'll put something on there for you.
Yes, we have an art meeting tomorrow.
An
for
art?
the Art, the airport art. I'm on
Oh,
that
great.
committee.
Yeah. Is it going to be Sasquatch, Bigfoot theme?
Could be, maybe a carved Sasquatch. There's somebody in Sisters that does great carvings that Zach is very enamored.
Or if Sisters doesn't want the bull
Oh, yes.
Lane Frost situation, maybe.
Let's hope that they want the bull. I saw the model of it and it is spectacularly gorgeous. And what was it, the 85th rodeo this year? Wasn't it the 85th? The history of Sisters and the rodeo and what it has brought to that community for all these decades. I really am hoping that maybe another commissioner, counselor or two will change their opinion because it is the history of Sisters. It's a Western themed town and I live right there because I love it. So thank you.
Last night I was able to attend the Neighbor Impact Community Listening Session in La Pine. They're doing it around the county right now. So Neighbor Impact is our community action agency, the food bank, energy assistance, rental assistance, Head Start, early Head Start, financial literacy programs, sometimes the septic and well assistance, all kinds of good things through Neighbor Impact. So if there's other opportunities to go to those listening sessions, you may want to try to attend. It was interesting because it just kind of got started with a slow conversation that got people, sparked all over the place. And it was just a real great opportunity to talk about what have we seen over the years? What's the best thing we can do to align ourselves? One of the realities was it still feels like we're kind of bouncing around post-COVID, ARPA dollars from our point of view. But now it's the reality of how are we going to settle in again for hopefully a good positive run for providing these community services to help stabilize folks. So it was a good discussion. Roger DeHogue, Judge DeHogue has been on the board for many years. He was on the board when I was on the board, and he's still on the board. So he was there last night. So he was able to help run the show last night, and then he drove back to Portland afterwards from La Pine.
Well, I'll share that Senator Merkley will be in town tomorrow for a kind of a roundtable discussion to try to understand what the impacts of Medicaid funding reductions are going to be for this region, this community. One of his staffers contacted me and said, our meeting space has fallen through. Do you have anything that we can use? And so I offered to check out whether there were meeting spaces available for the time that they requested, and there was sort of limited opportunities here at the county admin building. So my first thought was, well, let's go over to the let's check over at Health Services. So that meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at Health Services. The full Board of Commissioners is invited. They did say that they from each organization they wanted just one spokesperson at the table, so other people, other representatives can come and be in the audience. So that is available to my fellow commissioners if you're interested. We would want a public notice of the meeting if anyone else is intending to come.
When is that again?
Tomorrow morning,
At 10:30, I believe, right? Something like that.
something like that.
Yes. Because I already have my day planned.
Yeah, I'll see. Thursday. Yeah, so I could be there for the beginning of it. I wouldn't be at the table. So yeah, I may be in the room because then I've just got to be down in La Pine for lunchtime. So yeah, please post it, I guess is a request. Good. Thank you very much for sharing. Anything else for this meeting?
We did have EDCO orientation yesterday. I thought that was fascinating. And if you missed it yesterday, you can go to this afternoon. really laying out their goals and responsibilities.
Edco.
Yes, EDCO.
Great.
Yeah, it was a really good meeting.
There's a, Ready board meeting this morning. I was not able to dial in. It's just that same conflict we've always had. They do it on Wednesday morning. So I was able to go to their last meeting. We didn't have a board meeting on that Wednesday a month ago or so. So hit or miss for on Ready right now. But yeah,
Just to follow up on Commissioner Dare's question about Ward Hamby, I was able to connect with Chris Doty. Chris will send an email follow-up to the full board with information about that. He's out of the office this week, and I let him
Okay.
know that an update next week would be
Yeah.
appropriate, but he's on it.
already
and
followed up on.
We'll get
Oh,
you.
that's great. No, I mean, honestly, hopefully that roundabout has improved
Yeah.
the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, that's, the study said it would.
That was,
He said it has especially fatality and
Right.
injury crashes, but he'll get you
I
additional.
mean, I came through it one day and there was a fatality like a half an hour later. So it's,
I remember there's a semi went right up and over the roundabout, not knowing it was going to be there. So they tried to make sure it was obvious. But if you're,
well, they need to have a bronze bull.
well, yeah,
See.
but if you're used to just going straight there, it's the first time you go through, you got to see it's a big change.
Oh, good.
one other thing I wanted to share was that the Solid Waste Advisory Committee met yesterday, and since I didn't have to go to the South Central Oregon Area Commission on Transportation meeting, I attended that. I mean, just one of the interesting things for the three of us to note is that the number of eligible the number of sites under consideration is rapidly shrinking. So, we were there, the SWAC set Roth Northeast aside. They're keeping consideration of Roth East in the mix. They're keeping consideration of this Horse Ridge site in the mix, and they're asking for more detailed analysis of that site so we can do an apples to apples comparison. CUID has taken Dodds Road off the table in response to neighboring concerns. And in the middle of the SWAC meeting, the partners associated with Moon Pit contacted Tim Brownell and said, we don't want to be considered anymore. So, I was feeling as stated at the end of our last of our last negotiations around the Moon Pit. I really want us to go into these final stages with multiple sites under consideration, so we actually can get a little competition between people who want to sell us their land and that they feel some urgency that they need to make a deal if they want to be chosen to be the entity that we purchase from. So I just by the end of the SWAC meeting, when it was apparent that we were narrowed down to 2 sites, I just re-emphasized that to the SWAC as they move forward with their analysis of Horse Ridge, that I don't think that they should bottleneck us down to one site at this point. I think we should be negotiating with multiple entities so that we get the benefits of negotiating with multiple entities.
So does Horse Ridge have water available currently?
No.
No water?
No.
All right.
No,
We can buy the 100 acres of water available for 2 million? Is that what we were just told this morning? Yeah.
I think more likely we would be looking for groundwater rights to buy, not surface irrigation rights to buy.
Okay.
Anything else for this meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.